Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast, and welcome to a man who we've spent the first 20 minutes of this conversation just having a chat about backdrops on Zoom. He's done some very artistic work, and for those of you who are listening to this, you can't actually see it because this is not up on YouTube yet, but absolute pleasure to welcome to the podcast today, Wilson Zehr, coming in all the way from Oregon in the US. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How about yourself, Darren?
Really well, thank you. And we just spent some time talking about backdrops and how the Zoom is sometimes a mirror image of us and our logos were coming back the front. But you've done a quick PowerPoint readjustment, and you've now got Zairmail, you've got Speedy, your new icon, the new product that you're about to release, and then you've got Real Mail made easy and fast. So the backdrop's looking really good,
Thank
and
you. I
you're right
appreciate
in the middle.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to. I really appreciate the chance to be on here and talk with you and to fix my backdrop, by the way.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Wilson, you're the founder and CEO of Zairmail, and you've mentioned just before we press record that the business has gone through a few iterations and changed owners over a period of time, and you're now back at the helm again. Before we jump in today, because this will be a really interesting topic, particularly for people in sales and sales leadership that perhaps are newer to technology and the fact that they might not have heard necessarily direct mail and the power of direct mail. For those of you who have been in the business for a long time, direct mail, is quite effective, but with the advent of the internet, probably took a little bit of gloss off its effectiveness. But I'm sure, Wilson, you're going to share with us today that it's making a big comeback and it can be a real clear differentiator. So before we jump into
Sure.
that stuff, love for you to give us a little bit of background in terms of your career. I also understand you're a PhD, and I'd love to know what was it that got you to create this business in the first place, and why you keep doing what you're doing today.
Okay. Yeah, we could talk about all of that. Thumbnail sketch. I give you the short form version. Um, I have an undergraduate degree in finance with a minor in computer science. I spent the first 4 or 5 years of my career as a software engineer, actually building software for a software language called Ada, which was mandated by the Department of Defense for all mission critical and embedded systems. So there's a bunch of my stuff still out there somewhere, I think. Hopefully doing no harm. Um, I went back, got my MBA, and moved into product marketing. I did product marketing for a line of software engineering tools. Um, and then I went into strategic alliances, went to work for a computer vendor. I managed our strategic alliances, our global relationship with Oracle Corporation, which is about a $300 million business for this
Mm.
computer company. I went on to do other kinds of strategic alliances, business development, executive management. Um, I've either started or worked on a dozen technology startups now. I've raised about $60 million or over $60 million in venture capital. I've returned more to investors, which is always a good thing.
Absolutely.
Uh, and I also, as you mentioned, I have honestly, from a PhD standpoint, a PhD. I've got a PhD in management, but I've got a couple that I've done. I've done a coursework for three PhDs, but I do actually have a PhD in management. And I have a graduate degree in business analytics from Harvard University as well. When I'm not working on this business or working on other startups, I also teach at the university environment. In the university system. So I teach usually marketing, entrepreneurship, finance, and business strategy.
Nice,
Uh, and I've published in those areas too. You can find me on Google Scholar, some of
nice,
my academic work.
excellent. So that's a big background. I'm thinking to myself as you're talking, we have enough hours in the day. Have you managed to stretch time? to get more time.
Yeah, just less sleep, I think. But
Less
yeah, no,
sleep. So you started Zairmail, I believe, back in 1999, and you mentioned before we press record that it's gone through a few ownership changes. What was with your background, having done those degrees and worked in entrepreneurship, business strategy, alliances, and so forth? What was it that prompted you to start this business? Because 1999, it was at the advent of the dot-com boom, internet was becoming bigger, and yet you've started a direct mail organization named Zairmail. So what was the catalyst for that? Because it for maybe the uninitiated, that might sound, well, hang on a second, that's very old school.
sure. Yeah, no, it was it was the dot-com gold rush, with a lot of easy money and a lot of people growing companies. It was really an amazing period of time. So it's, every 100 years or something like that,
Yeah.
I guess. Um, but the startup I worked on before was something called Effusion, which is convergence between the internet and the public telephone network. So we made voice over IP gateways and applications, mostly for telephone companies and internet service providers.
Okay.
Um, and my background is in software, so most of what I do is software. And I've been doing cloud-based applications for a long time. So it occurred to me, in that time frame, well, and some of our technology, you still use today. It's in products like Skype and things like that. So we were able to get to a successful exit in Fusion, and the technology is still being useful. The company was jointly funded by Hewlett Packard and Draper Fisher Jurvetson, DFJ's Tier 1 California VC.
Yeah.
Um, but the idea was convergence. So we have this whole world of legacy applications, and then we have the internet, which is a brand new tool. And
Mm.
honestly, that's a little bit of a misnomer. The internet has been around for since the 50s in one
Yeah.
shape or another. But the web browser, is a function of the 90s. So when people really got access to that. So when in that world, what we felt and still feel is that there's a whole lot of opportunities around, taking legacy tools and legacy applications and melding them to digital technologies to get a different kind of performance, to, take
Mm.
advantage of the benefits that are available from the internet, being immediate, content rich, um, ubiquitous. I mean, that kind of thing. Um, so with Effusion, was a voice, public telephone network. We were working on integration. In this case, we're integrating with the U.S. Postal Service, and we started out saying, if we could make a letter as fast and easy as an email, that would be a good thing. People would probably appreciate that and use it.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads naturally to this question is, yeah, but why? I mean, why wouldn't I just use email? And it turns out that from a marketing standpoint, not just a consumer standpoint, because if you think about mail, transactional mail like Visa card statements and bank statements, things like that, transaction mail is way down. People are
Yeah.
doing that electronically. And I personally, I get my bank statements electronically. I don't get them in the
Yeah.
mail. So that makes complete sense to me. But from a marketing standpoint, mail is a tool, just like any other tool, like email, like search engine optimization, like yard signs and door hangers. And it's got a place in that landscape. And direct mail does some things that no other medium can do. So one of those things is that it can reach every household and business in America. And I'm talking about America because we're a U.S.
Yeah.
Postal Service integration.
Yeah.
Every household business in America 6 days a week. And I'm not aware of any other tool that does that. Secondly, it's proactive communication, which means, if you're doing search engine optimization, which we do too, by the way, it's a great tool, or a great technique. But you still have to wait for people to come find you.
Yeah.
But a lot of times when I'm selling or marketing, I don't want people to wait to find me. I want to go find them. I want to
Yeah.
talk to them and solve their problems, even a problem they may not know they have. If I'm waiting for them to find me, they have to understand they have a problem before they're even going to look for me.
Yeah.
So, so that's a benefit. The third thing we talk about is precise audience targeting. So if I want to reach Jewish dentists in New Jersey that have purchased a car in the last 6 months, I can find that list and I can have a conversation with those people.
Mm.
If I want to do that with something like email or something, it becomes very difficult. I mean, to get those kind of demographics, even social media, today's social media is getting closer, but you still don't have that level of demographic information for
Mm.
targeting. And I
Yeah.
can give you 6 examples for how we've used that in the past. Um, and then the final one is this built into the American psyche. Here, the Postal Service likes to talk about the mail moment, right? This idea that, people get home from work and they walk out to the post office and the sun comes out and there's angelic music and, and they reach in a mailbox and pull stuff out, right? It's a magical moment. And I think they romanticize it just a little bit. But the fact is that most Americans do, look at their mailbox once a day and see what's in there, and they don't react negatively to it. They'll sort through it and they'll save the stuff that's good and maybe pass on the stuff that's not.
Mm.
Um, and it doesn't have a negative reaction to the brand or the person. Whereas today, I mean, think about something like telesales. When you get a cold phone call, how do you react? I mean, I
Well, I tend to let the phone call, if I don't know the number, it just goes straight to voicemail.
Right, yeah, no. Every once in a while, I get my partner, and she's like, she'll take care of him. How did you get this number?
Who are you? What do you want?
So and if in Zairmail we sell lists too, so I get to see the consumer and business lists, and business lists are still pretty healthy, but consumer lists, because of the do not call registry in the United States,
Yeah.
most consumer records do not have a phone number, or if they do have a phone number, it's not you're not allowed to call it.
Yeah.
Um, so it's that's a little problem, and I'm not trying to pick on them at all. I mean, we could talk about other kinds of media. I'm just saying that direct mail, from that standpoint, is a very good tool.
Mm.
So, in my mind, when I'm thinking about marketing, I'm thinking about the customer journey and what does that look like? Where is the customer at? I'm going to try and meet them where they're at. I'm going to try and to inform them, understand what their problems are, inform them, and to help them solve a problem that I can solve better than anybody else.
Mm.
And I can do that using a variety of tools. And so, there's this old saying, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
That's
So
right.
there are tools out there where every solution looks like a web page, but every problem I'm solving doesn't look like a web page. So we have to, pick the tools that are going to help move the customer along that customer journey. And at different points in the customer journey, different tools would be appropriate.
Mm.
And I can give you a quick little example if you like.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, I don't want to monopolize your conversation with
Mm.
this. Um,
That's cool.
But we worked on a school bond initiative in Eastern Oregon. Um, and there's an existing bond that they'd done a really good job of refinancing when interest rates were low during the recession. So it wasn't a bad deal for the community. But the state was offering a matching grant that said, if you raised another $2 million, give or take, then we would match that. And the school needed a new gymnasium. So they wanted to get that money from the state so they could, build a new gymnasium basically at half price. Um, and in order to do that, they had to have this bond initiative. So when we worked on that, they engaged us to help with that. Um, for the bond initiative, we created a website because we needed a focal point for communication, a place to put the content. We went out and created videos of, people who had used the gymnasium in the past. People talked about what condition it was in. People talked about generations of family who used it and benefited from it. And we used social media to build that message. Um, we talked about to the Parent Teacher Association. We went to coffee meetings with the Lions and local organizations. We did do yard signs, door hangers and that kind
Mm.
of stuff. But in this case, direct mail had an important role to play. Basically, here in the United States, we can buy a voter file. So we went to the county and we bought a list of all the voters in the county. This is a tax-based bond measure, which
Hmm.
means it's paid for by homeowners based on, they pay, a certain amount of money, usually just cents, 10 cents, 20 cents or whatever per $1,000 of assessed value. So it usually the cost falls on the homeowners. So we were able to get the list of registered voters. We did an overlay on it and divided it into homeowners and renters. And then we did another overlay on that and divided those two into people who had kids and people who didn't.
Right.
Then, because those groups of people have different needs and need a different kind of message. So when we started out this campaign, we went out with a postcard campaign and we talked about to the people who had kids, who were taxpayers, about the benefit their children would see. Well, for those who didn't have kids but were homeowners, we could talk about the sense of community, right? The benefit their kids might have had when they were in school, and being able to contribute to the community or create a legacy going forward.
Mm.
And for renters, it's all goodness, right? I mean, their kids are just going to get benefits, so we can go out with that message. So we do that at the beginning of the campaign. We do something about halfway. In Oregon, well, not halfway. Let me back up on that. In Oregon, it's all vote by mail. It has been for 30 years. And
Okay.
the reason why that is for economic reasons. It's just a lot less expensive to do vote by mail. And we also find voter participation tends to go way up.
Wow.
If people don't have to, physically go into a voting booth. Um, but cost is the number one driver. Um, but we also know that when people get the ballots in the mail, some people just vote right away, right? They'll get the ballot, they'll read the book, they'll check boxes and put it in the mail. Some people wait until the actual election day to do it.
Hmm.
So we were able to find out when the ballots would be mailed. We hit them with a direct mail piece the day before the ballots arrived in the mail. And then we hit them with another piece the day before ballots were due. The voting was completed and the bond measure was overwhelmingly approved. I mean, the prior bond measure, they were up all night because it was approved by 3 votes or something. I mean, it was
Wow.
really close. And the stuff we did was not even close. I mean, it was done at early in the evening, So in that case, it's not all direct mail. I mean, we used a website, we used direct mail, we used personal outreach, we used social media, we used door hangers and yard signs. Get out the vote. There were some people that went door to door and talked to
Yeah.
people. I mean,
Yeah.
and so as marketers, that's really what we should be looking at is an entire program that helps support the customer journey rather than how do I use SEO or
Mm.
how do I use Google AdWords, well,
Mm.
or whatever the tool might be.
Mm. And when you look at the, I guess the specific, because you mentioned you're about to cut the, I guess the region down into people who own the home, who are the renters, who had kids, who didn't have kids, and
Mhm.
then you target accordingly. Was there any way to measure the effectiveness of the direct mail campaign? So what are the metrics that you use to measure effectiveness? Because I'm thinking people can listen to this and say, well, I understand the concept of going to the mailbox, and it's the, as you mentioned, it's the sunlight. It's like the Blues Brothers. You got the sunlight hitting you in the face. It's a message from God. Um, but some might say, well, it's just easy for me to send a text message, Wilson, or an email. But there has to be something psychological about having something that's directly addressed to you that looks as if it's targeted because it is, that hits you at the
Mhm.
right time. So how do you measure in things like this the effectiveness of a campaign, given that it's part of an overarching, I guess, program?
Yeah, no, I mean the other thing, part of what you said, I mean, I agree with what you said, but the other piece of it is that's tactile. You can touch it, feel it.
Yes.
Um, and these days, there's not quite the same volume of it, which helps and makes it even
Yeah.
more effective. What you say, I mean, you're posing a great question. How do you measure results? In direct mail, where it's historically, it's been completely ROI driven, right? Return
Hmm.
on investment driven. So we want to measure results. We want to make sure that we're producing more in lifetime customer value than we're consuming in actual advertising cost.
Mm.
Um, and direct mails or direct response has always been that way. That's why people continue to use mail. That's why it hasn't gone by, because it still makes sense from a financial standpoint. In this case, it's a little more difficult to measure because but as when you vote, they don't tell you who voted what. I mean, it's a
Mm,
confidential process, the actual vote, unless people volunteer that information.
mm,
But typically, if we were doing direct mail that wasn't political direct mail, and in fact, in this case, we could measure hits on the website. We could measure if we put a phone number, a toll-free number, we can measure that as well. But when in direct mail, typically you would have a response vehicle, and a response vehicle could be a phone number, a toll-free number. It could be a website. It could be some other mechanism used to measure the response,
yeah,
and that's important.
yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, you can use direct mail other ways too. So we talk about, and this is a little far afield from what you're talking about directly, but the marketing professor, they'll throw this out. So we talk about direct response advertising versus brand advertising, right? And those are not mutually exclusive. They're on a continuum. So
Hmm.
in one end you say is brand, and the other end is solely direct, 100% direct response. Most people are not at one extreme or the other. They're somewhere in the middle. But if you think about a Nike ad, I mean, they're a
Hmm.
poster child for this. They say, just do it. And there's
Yeah.
some, athlete with a soccer ball. And you're like, well, what do I buy? I don't know what to do with this. But all they're trying to do is associate this image with their brand, because they know that you're going to buy retail. When you go into a store, you're going to go to the shelf. And when you reach out for that product or service, or product in this case, they want your hand to end up on a Nike box. And so
Yes.
brand awareness becomes very important. So
Yeah.
they focus on brand. With direct response, we want people to buy today.
Yes.
Right. And so when you look at the say that the toll-free number would take up the whole page, it's a dial now. Um, but everybody's somewhere, somewhere in between, and the response vehicle might be different. Think about a car dealership. They're not looking for you to call. They want you on the lot because they know that that's the most likely way they're going to close the sale,
Yeah.
is to have you on the lot. So, what is it we want to accomplish? And then is it response or is it brand? And
Mm.
that helps frame the content for our advertising.
And you mentioned before that you still use software as a big part of this, but it's the tactile component of it. And the difference with this versus things like social media is social media, it's almost like attraction. You want to entice somebody to take some form of action versus the direct mail. It's almost like a push campaign, but not pushing them into doing something. It could be a brand awareness. It could be asking them to take some form of definitive action. But you're actually targeting it based on the research you've done so that you're not sending, for example, in my neighborhood, every now and then there'll be letter drops, and it'll be a local electrician or the local gardening maintenance person that drops their business card in, right? That's a form of direct marketing, but
Mhm.
it's also very random because they're going to have to take the punt that of the, I don't know, 50,000 houses around this particular area they drop a business card in, there's going to be a certain percentage that will be in the market for those services.
Yeah, we would call that carpet bombing. And yeah, I mean, if you send enough business cards out, you're likely to hit one or two. But I mean, there's other techniques, especially if you've got access to good data. For example, if I look at new movers, people who have moved recently, or new homeowners, there's statistics there, research that shows us that when somebody buys a new home, within the first 60 days, they spend oftentimes thousands of dollars on new furniture and
Yeah.
appliance repair and a bunch of other kinds of things. So why wouldn't I target those people to make sure that
Mm,
when they're solving problems and when they're in the mood to spend money on those problems, my brand is front and center. um, that would make a lot of sense, I think.
mm, yeah.
Um, and if somebody moves, for example, if somebody moves, they need to, especially if they move from a long way away. If I'm moving from Virginia to California, well, they're going to need a whole set of service providers. They're going to need a new person to cut their hair, a new person to do their teeth, a new dentist, a new whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a whole set of service providers, usually that is a family, we build out a personal ecosystem and they have to recreate that. So why wouldn't you target those people that move?
Mm.
So it's another way of framing the problem, trying to understand what the problem is and how you can help people solve it. I mean, I've talked about this in other places before. Sales, oftentimes, especially in the university environment, we don't talk about sales as much because there's not as much research behind it. People think about it like sales, like that used car lot, like the guy in the
Yeah.
Madras plaid coat who's going to try to get you to take home the car you don't really need. But sales is not really like that. I mean, sales is professional. I mean, most of the salespeople I know are extremely professional,
Mm.
and it's all about problem solving. It's
Mm.
understanding, try to meet the customer where they live, understand what their problems are, and work with them to solve those problems.
Yeah.
And to the extent that you can do that, you can be successful. Um, and by the way, if we can't sell things, then the rest of it's all for naught. I mean, I mean, I can build great technology, but if I can't solve problems and I can't sell it, then I can't be successful as a business.
No, no. And the more you're speaking about this, the more I'm thinking that the direct mail sort of campaign with the right amount of research, and obviously you need to do some data gathering and getting access to the right people who might be in a demographic that you want to target. It becomes now a lot more targeted. And when you create a campaign or an awareness campaign or an offer, it's more specific to that particular demographics problems. That if they're in the
Mhm.
buying cycle, then they're more likely to then at least investigate what is it that this organization can offer them to solve that particular problem. So it becomes a lot more targeted than just putting out, for example, a big Facebook ad and hoping there'll be people to pick up the phone and call us or send an email or go to our website and download a free, lead magnet or whatever the case might be. It
No,
becomes a lot more personalized.
no, I think you're exactly right. I mean, I remember long ago, doing a product manager, being a product manager, having a sales tool, and we did a bunch of lead generation. We generated these leads, and went down to meet with the salesperson in Santa Clara, California, and sat in his office, and I said, we've sent you all these leads. It doesn't look like you called any of them. What's up? And he says, "Give me those again." So I had him at that point. It was a printout, those
Yeah,
ones
yeah,
that with the fold in them.
yeah,
And he
yeah,
goes through and he says, "Circle that one." Goes down, he circles the one, he says, circle another one. He says, "Okay, I'll call those ones." So the whole list. Why? He says, "Look, there are only so many hours in a day. These are people that I know that have this problem, and those are the ones that are going to turn into deals. And so that's what I'm going to spend my time on. And the rest of this is just noise." It's like, oh, okay. But so, and the epilogue to that is, so tell me how to find more like that, right?
yeah,
Like the ones you're circling,
yeah,
because that's what I want to put in front of you.
yeah. Which means you do more research. You need to know your customer, you need to know your avatar, you need to know what their problems are, and you need to know where they hang out.
Exactly. Exactly right. I mean, is it, if you know the customer has the kind of problem that you can solve before you pick up the phone, you are much more likely to be
Mm.
successful.
And with campaigns like you run, and going back to the example with the school and the gymnasium and the bonds, you mentioned there were people potentially knocking on doors as well. So we're not saying that direct mail is a singular isolated campaign. It's part of an integrated campaign to build awareness and get access to your customer. It's not, there might be other mechanisms that you'd want to use as well, not just relying on direct mail.
I think so. I mean, there are cases where we see clients that just use direct mail. I mean, especially people in the collection industry,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't say that's traditional direct mail, but I mean, there are
Yeah.
people who use the mail to do other jobs,
Mm.
and they may or may not use, they probably have a website. I mean, it's pretty common these days, but the tools they use are vary. But oftentimes when we're thinking about something like this, it's what we're doing is an integrated marketing campaign, right?
Yep.
To quote some buzzwords. And so, the whole idea is being able to solve these problems using the best tool possible. I can give you another example. That's a fun example. When I first started out my career, before I went to college, when I first you know was starting in the working world, I was starting my career as a mechanic, an auto mechanic, and um, and in the shop there they use something called a flat rate manual. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Now, what a flat.
Yeah, flat rate manual. So in that,
Okay.
in so you somebody come in and we diagnose a problem. They need a transmission, and so there'd be there'd be a job that needed to be done. It's R&R transmission, repair and replace transmission, and the book would give you 2.5 hours for doing it. And the book has the difference between what it would take an expert, what it would take a novice, etc. So it's called used to be back in the day. I don't even know if they still have it, but it's called a flat rate manual. And so the shop guy, shop steward or the shop guy would say, all right, you've got, number 6, you got 2.5 hours R&R transmission. And you say, okay. And so it turns out that, if you have the right tools, you can do it a lot faster than that. So if you could rack it out in an hour and
Yeah.
make it work properly, you get paid for 2.5 hours. That's a good deal. And so it
Mm.
makes sense to invest in the tools that allow you to do that. If you
Yeah.
don't have the right tools, it may take you 5 hours and you're working for free today,
Yeah.
So I think that kind of random experience at the beginning of my career kind of sensitized me to the power of tools, right? And how important it is to have the right tool for the right job.
Hmm.
And it's an incredible advantage.
Mm.
And we need to think in terms of problems and tools and solutions
Yeah.
in
And what is the
marketing.
most appropriate way to get access, well, to those people who have a problem or predict have a problem based on research, based on understanding. So,
Right. I
so
mean, you mentioned direct mail before. I mean, excuse me, email.
yeah,
Not and not to pick on those guys, but I know we do email marketing too, by the way, because we have an integrated marketing campaign we use direct mail, we use email, use
yeah,
AdWords. Um, but even legitimate emails, something like 30% of it's not delivered because of
mm,
all the spam filters and stuff. The average person has 2.6 email addresses. So, I mean, we have to find the right email box. And I have to tell you, me personally, I get about, I don't know, 400 or 500 emails a day. And so
wow,
when I'm going through those in the morning, I'm not looking to read stuff. I'm looking to delete stuff.
yeah,
Right? So I go through the stack first and I say,
delete,
gone, 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 right? And so you may have a perfectly good message, but I may never see it
yes,
because I'm looking for stuff I recognize, that needs my response.
yeah,
Um, so, but there are places where it makes sense. The bank sends me statements and email,
mm,
or they'll send me. I just got a letter from the bank that I needed for a payroll company. Um, And I wanted that. And so I saw it, I recognized it, opened that letter. So for some kinds of communication, it's a very good tool.
yeah,
But as you say, carpet bombing an entire, or trying to, in their case, it's not even carpet bombing. They're trying to boil the ocean, because
yes,
they figure, if an email costs 1/100th of a cent in volume, then I could just send out 5 million of them and somebody will respond, right? I mean, otherwise those guys selling Viagra, they would all go away.
Well, it obviously works because they just do it in massive volume, and that's their return. So they're prepared to do it.
Right. So, so I don't know. I think there's a proper way to use that too. For example, in our case, if I have a pre-existing relationship with somebody, so we have an email newsletter that goes out to, I don't know, 1 million people a month or something like that. People who've said, hey, we like what you're talking about. Tell us more.
Yeah.
And I send out we send it out, I think twice a month now. And we always have interesting stuff. And we can tell from the click-throughs and stuff, the level of engagement. Level of engagement is really high, 70% or more.
Yeah,
So
nice.
there's people that want to read what we're talking about. And it's a
Yeah.
great thing. It's a way for us to inform them and for them to stay connected with us. And
Mm.
the tool works really well for that type of application.
Nice. I do want to get on to talking about Speedy, which is the icon above your right shoulder. But before I do, there's a question
Yeah.
that's been burning in the back of my mind around all of this, and that is with the advent of technology and the society that we're now living in, which is more instant gratification, do things now, just you can send an email and it's almost instantaneous.
Mhm.
What are some of the objections or the challenges you guys face when you're doing an integrated campaign of which includes direct mail? When people turn around and say, "Hey, it's in Australia we call it snail mail," so snail sending
Mhm.
stuff through the post. And you mentioned that the US Postal Service can get access to people 6 days a week. Well, in Australia, Australia Post have progressively made it less and less in terms of sending out mail. So I think most regions get a mail service every second day now. So the I guess the question is for people that say, well, it's easier and quicker for me to get access to my ideal customer by sending them an email. What's the I guess the retort to that in terms of using direct mail that it is not as speedy, but it could be just if not more effective.
Oh, well, for that, in that application, we go back and we talked about audience targeting, you know, deliverability, etc. I mean, so if I want to talk to the right person, I want to make sure that message is getting there. Direct mail is going to be a lot more effective for that application, but it's going to have a higher cost too. So which means we're going to have to sell more stuff, right? And so so there's a trade-off there because we've got to make the ROI work.
Mm.
I will say this, so that's part of the reason for Zairmail. Zairmail is not Speedy, which would you want to talk about, but Zairmail, our primary service, you upload a letter, upload a list, you see a preview of what you want to produce, you push the button, you're in the mail tomorrow, the next day at a fraction of the cost. So if you think about you're talking about in Australia, I mean, the US Postal Service was the brunt of jokes for years. We called it snail mail too. There's actually a partner we work with called Snailworks that does, does some mail applications. Um, the but the Postal Service has gotten really good, and they've gotten, well, a lot better. Part of it's by technology, part of it's logistics, and they had to. I mean, I asked the guy one time, I said, about the increase in turn rates, and he said, the main post office here in Portland, Oregon, he says we have to, we do 40% of the world's mail. If we don't get it out the door, we're just buried in it. I
Yeah,
mean, it's self-defense as much as anything, you know. So here in the US, there's two classes of mail. There's lots more classes of mail, but the two primary classes people use for this kind of application are first class mail and standard A. And first class mail is regular mail, like you get a retail stamp and put it on a letter and drop it in the mailbox. Of course, you can do it from a business perspective, like we do too, where we pre-sort it and and pre-process it for the U.S. Postal Service, which is much faster and much
mm,
cheaper. Um, or standard A is what they traditionally used to call um, bulk mail, or some people even call it junk mail, right? If
yeah,
you're somebody like GE Healthcare or Visa or MasterCard, American Express, somebody who's doing mail, and they're doing
yeah,
millions of pieces, they usually use standard A because it's less expensive. You can save 20 cents a piece on it. And if you're doing millions of pieces of mail, that adds up.
yeah,
But for most of our clients, I mean, if you're doing 5,000 pieces of mail, it's just better to be faster. The response rates are better with first class mail and the mail moves faster. So using Zairmail, using the tool that I'm describing, literally you can launch a direct mail campaign in 60 seconds right from your desktop. Boom. You're in there. You're out the door tomorrow, the next day, and then it's delivered anywhere in the United States within 3 days,
yeah. Okay,
typically.
yeah,
And we provide tracking too, so you can tell where you're made. We provide tracking. You can tell when it's processed, printed, mailed, delivered. And with Speedy, we'll even send an email confirmation when it's delivered, so you can see it end to end, and it's super fast. Um, and that's unique to our service because we're software people. That's what we designed.
yeah,
Um, so it's less of an issue with what you're talking about. And the bulk of what we do is first class mail
mm,
because our clients are, we say, Zairmail's faster, easier, more reliable. that's what our customers are looking for. They're looking for fast and easy,
Yeah.
and first class mail is the way we make it fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And the getting direct mail, going back to what we were talking about earlier, people are more likely to have that experience going to the mailbox. If there's something a little bit different or unique that's there that's personally addressed, they're probably more likely to be interested in opening that than something else.
Right. Well, it depends on what you mail too. I mean, there's not all mail's created equal. I mean, you could do a postcard, a jumbo postcard, and then it becomes part of the what artwork do you have on there? Is it going to pop? Do you engage people? Do you shock people? I mean, all the things that you would do in marketing, the advertising approaches that you use, humor, sex appeal, analytical. I mean,
Yeah.
all of those things still apply
Yeah.
when you're designing a jumbo postcard in the mail. And the cost could be less. Of course, the downside is you have less room for information, and that information needs to be appropriate for everybody to view. It's not confidential because it's a
Mm.
postcard.
Yeah.
And if it's good, maybe you'll end up on the fridge. Maybe you stick around for 6 months.
Possibly.
Um, on the other side of that is if you want something that's a little longer, a little more complex message, it's going to include personal information. Like, for example, you're going to do a mortgage refi or something, and you're going to talk about the amount of somebody's house and what their new payments would look like, what their existing payments look like, what their new payments look like, that kind of thing. Then that needs to be confidential. You're going to put that in an envelope. And so then the question becomes, how do I get it open?
Mm.
Right? Part of his targeting, you might be doing an envelope teaser, it might be the way the envelope is laid out. Maybe use an envelope, maybe use a snap pack.
Mm.
Snap pack being one of those mailers you get from a bank for a PIN number, when you tear off the edges.
Yeah.
Um, so there's techniques we could use to get that done.
Nice.
Um, but that's a little more detail.
Yeah.
We see a lot of postcards these days, people trying to get a message in front of people. But if we're doing collections or other kinds of mortgage marketing and stuff, it's pretty much letters, first class
Yeah.
mail.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it. So let's talk about Speedy Zairmail. So you've got a little icon there, and is this something that's just launched?
Speedy is just being launched right now. It's years in the making. I mean, for years we didn't have the technology to do it. Just so you know, when we talk about the speed of delivery we do our production and fulfillment through a network of production sites. So we actually route the mail electronically to the closest place near where it needs to go, and then produce it and mail it. So
Okay.
we do that for reasons of, it's better, it's faster and less expensive. It's also better for the environment.
Yeah.
And if somebody, for example, wanted to mail a letter from Australia, it would make a lot more sense to move it electronically and produce it, as long as it's going here to the United
Yeah.
States, produce it here in the United States and mail it. It's going to be faster, easier, better for the environment.
Yeah.
It makes a lot more sense. Well, Speedy, the technology exists now to do even single letters. So with Speedy, you can find it at www.zairmail.com/speedy. It's a free download, completely free. It doesn't require a credit card, and the first two letters are free. So for those who want to try it, basically, what happens is you have this icon on your desktop. You can drag and drop a PDF or a Word file. Um, it'll it'll ask you, where do you want to set this? You can give it an address, or you select one from the contact information, and you push the button and it goes. It turns into a letter, and that letter you're notified. You can turn on or off alerts, but if alerts are turned on, you're notified when it's processed, printed, mailed, actually delivered, and you get a complete record of it. And it's only if, as I mentioned, the first two letters are free. As long as you keep providing referrals, you get free letters for life, for as long as you
Good
for
marketing there,
those,
Wilson.
yeah, for those people who want to pay, I mean, it's only slightly more than the cost of postage.
Yeah.
So it's a great tool from that perspective. We feel like everybody should be using it. I mean, You don't have to go to the supermarket and get stamps or the post office, wait in line at the post office. You don't have to find a piece of paper. Or a bigger challenge, it turns out, for most people is figuring out how to print an address on an envelope. I mean, I don't know if you've ever tried to print an envelope on your printer at home.
No, no.
What is
You know what? I use this thing called a pen.
so yeah, so I mean it's just it's faster, easier, less expensive. And if within, for the first couple it's going to be free. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And for large organizations that might do a lot of mail, it makes a lot of sense. You
Mm.
save a lot of time and money and everything's trackable. So
So I'm thinking just an application for sales organizations and you mentioned the handwritten note. Once people finish with an appointment, they write a handwritten note to the person and maybe give them something of value or link to an article or photocopy of an article, whatever the case might be. This is a way of continuing that, I guess, personal engagement that can differentiate themselves against their competition by using something like this that's personalized, that it's in the mail. So it's literally tactile. People are going to be opening it rather than just going to an email, which let's be honest, you just mentioned before you get about 500 a day, and how many of those emails never actually reach their destination?
yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, and we talked about the sales rep in Silicon Valley I mentioned, who was looking at those leads. That was one of his techniques, right? He would call in a customer and he would, after he called one a customer, he would write a handwritten little note card, thank you for meeting with me. Here's what we talked about. Here's what next steps look like. And he just drop it in the mail. And you know, um, because you have to, it's not just, it is solving problems, but you have to earn the right to solve a customer's problems. And you earn that right based on trust and relationship.
Mm,
And so that's an interesting way that he used to start off his relationship, saying, you're important to me, and you're important enough that I'm going to take time and I'm going to write you a note and talk about what we, and summarize what we talked about in next and
mm.
outline next steps. Um, and I'm going to do it in a way that's personal and tactile and meaningful.
Yeah.
Um, and you can do that same thing with a tool like Speedy. And from every report we've had so far, it does make a difference.
And it's
Um,
memorable.
yeah.
It's unique. It's like it's a personalized, thoughtful message that says I'm thinking of you, and it's delivered in a way that most people wouldn't necessarily expect. Because the other thing I wanted to ask you as we sort of bring this to a close is that as technology continues to take over our lives, and we've got things like AI now coming through and doing all sorts of stuff, where do you see direct mail? Because it seems like direct mail is for the most part, direct mail in terms of people's thoughts have gone like this, as internet has gone like that. But
Mhm.
we're saying you can actually use direct mail as a differentiator to be more memorable and stand out against your competition. Looking forward from the rest of 2025, Wilson, and into 26 and beyond, and it might be a loaded question. I don't mean it to sound like this, but where do you see direct mail going and the type of work that you're doing with Zairmail into the future? Do you think this can continue to be a huge differentiator for anybody in the marketplace, whether it be individuals or large organizations?
Well, I do think it has a role to play, and it's a differentiator, and it will continue to do that. The thing about direct mail is it's driven by ROI, so as long as it's got a positive return, people will continue to use that.
Yeah.
Um, AI is interesting from me as a software engineer. I mean, AI, we've been hearing about AI for since I was in school, right? I mean, I remember going to lectures and talking about the cognitive intelligence of computing devices, and you know, um, 2001: A Space Odyssey and iRobot, and so in my mind, that was what artificial intelligence was meant to be, a symbiote being that, was able to do human-like things.
Mhm.
And the AI we have today is, in most cases, nowhere close to that. I mean, we're using large language models to try to extract new meaning from data and especially from large bodies of data.
Mm.
So and that knowledge can inform a lot of different tools. It could inform direct mail, it can inform search engine optimization, it can inform a lot of things. We also use intelligence like that. We don't call it artificial intelligence, but real intelligence to route letters in the network, based on time of day, the amount of traffic, the destination. So we do some of that in real time in our software that's closer to what I would consider art, real intelligence rather than
Mm,
artificial intelligence. Um, it does have profound implications, though, for the way people find information. I would say that. So, it will change the way people do search engine optimization. And in fact, search is already changed dramatically.
mm,
One of the stats we talk about in class is that, it used to be, oftentimes still is, a lot of people start a browsing session with a search engine. It's built right
mm,
into the search bar. But the interesting dynamic is that if you think about e-commerce, people who are actually selling stuff, retail e-commerce, people actually selling stuff online, um, direct to consumer, about 50% of that, you know, about 50% of that traffic is Amazon. The Amazon online retail sales only makes up about 12 to 14% of retail sales overall. Most of
yeah,
it is still bricks and mortar. Uh, but of the part that does happen online, about half of that is owned by Amazon. Well, Amazon has its own ecosystem. So if I know that I'm going to be buying something from Amazon as a consumer, I don't need a search engine. I just go to Amazon and I'm going to use Amazon's tools or
mm,
eBay and use their tools. So that already changes things. And then
yeah,
if people are going online now and they're trying to use, um, natural language queries to find information,
yeah,
the tools required to do that are much different. They don't look like a traditional search engine.
mm,
And if we had more time, we could talk about the evolution of search engines. There's been at least three generations of that. And it seems like longer term, there's much bigger implications for that industry, for disruption of that industry.
yeah,
Um, but there are certain kinds of research we do where we don't want to rely on the data, right? Where we're asking a question and we want information that goes beyond existing data. Um, well, let me give you, a kind of a one more academic-y kind of example. I mean, think about the way you innovate today, or you kind of come up with a new idea, right? Maybe you get together a group of people that have different areas of expertise. I mean, that would be a recommended method, right? Everybody's got a different sphere of experiences and knowledge base, and being able to pool those together, we have a bigger base we're pulling from. They brainstorm an idea. We put the idea on a board. We don't like it, right? So we
mm,
toss it aside. We get another one, or maybe we do like it. We go with it. We get it in front of a consumer. It comes back. We do agile method. We come back. We change it up, and we go out with another one. So, and if you think about that process, the mistakes are just as important as the getting to the right answer. The mistakes are important to getting to the right answer.
mm,
But if I'm just looking at data, and I'm trying to look at everybody else that's successful, all I'm looking at is the end result. I don't have those endpoints. And by the way, if I'm a machine, I don't know if it's the right solution or not until if a human tells me,
yeah,
right, informs me. So I don't really know where to start. I don't know where to take a right turn or a left turn.
mm,
So that process is really different. Um,
mm,
could we get there programmatically? Sure, at some point, but we're quite a ways away from that, I
got it,
think.
got it.
Yeah.
Fascinating, fascinating. So, Wilson, greatly appreciate you coming on and sharing some wisdom about direct mail and all the campaigns, and wish you well with Speedy. Where can people find more out about you and more about Zairmail, and where can they connect with you?
Well, thanks for asking, Darren. The website is www.zairmail.com. I feel bad because I've said that a couple of times. It's not really supposed to be a commercial, I know.
It's okay.
So Zairmail.com. If you want to try Speedy, it's at /Speedy. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I actually have my academic portfolios online at www.wilsonzehr.com. So if people are more interested in some of that stuff, you can find it. And we have a toll-free number, 888-898-0066. And unlike a lot of properties online that where they're trying to discourage you, you go to the chat box
Yeah.
or trying to discourage you from talking to people. We want to talk to our customers or potential customers because that's how we build relationships and build trust. And so we're happy to talk with anybody who wants to call.
And that is a differentiator because I was actually called. I got a letter from my bank yesterday, and I was trying to get a number to call them, and there was no number on their website, and it was very. And I eventually found one through a different mechanism, and yeah, it was not a good conversation. Anyway, so
No, I'm with you.
greatly appreciate you coming on the podcast. I'll put all that information in the show notes, and certainly encourage people to check out Zairmail, check out your website as well. And yeah, thanks so much for being a guest on the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast.
Well, thanks again for the opportunity, Darren. Really appreciate it. And thanks for the fun conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, Wilson. Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it. But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.